Sid, good to see you in the new style. Of course, I just mentioned, and it's even looking better with the hat on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So, Sid, I have my team here, of course, and we will be publishing this, putting this across in our channel. We actually have called it Guftagu. Guftagu is a Urdu word which means conversation. The whole idea is, not only talk about HR, sometimes also talk about different things with different people. So our plans are that we will be talking to people like you and others with different facets of business, HR, other interest levels, so that somewhere somebody can get some, good pointers, good thoughts. So welcome, Siddharth, and for everybody, all the listeners, Siddharth, I have known Siddharth for some time now. From one of my previous assignments. He's of course, so if you are a good, usually follow LinkedIn, social media, you will see one person who will be very active with very thoughtful posts, few but very thoughtful. Siddharth has been, I call him Sid actually, so much more comfortable calling him that. Been a CHRO, a practitioner, a psychometrician to a great extent. Last year, in fact, he did organize for many of us who wanted to learn psychometry. He organized sessions for us every Saturday. I was one of good participants who participated in all the sessions. He's an excellent coach, of course, a group facilitator, a known person within youngsters in HR, obviously, and even people who have a lot of experience, so to say, but they still keep on learning so many things from Sid, who, despite having 2 decades of HR experience, being ranked as being recipient of 40 under 40 by an initiative by SHRM, but has retained his humility to such a great extent. I really admire that part in all the leaders, and Sid is one of them. Very humble. And you can always reach out to him for whatever need you may have. Of course, we'll specifically talk about some interesting projects. He's already authored 4 books, and one of his books, in fact, got mentioning also it was published to NHRD, and then our Dr. Goldsmith mentioned some very good words about him. And recently, this is the book. Recently, he has authored Being an Awesome People Leader. And he actually works very closely with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, which all of us know about. And this book, which is what we are going to slightly discuss, the interesting things in this book that he has mentioned. The beauty of this book is, of course, it's very, it's been kept to a decent number of pages and doesn't beat around the bush, straight away to the point, like Siddharth always is, and some very interesting and very simple thoughts which leaders can adopt for being a good people leader. So Sid, so first of all, if you can talk about your, one thing that is very different in your profile, and one thing which you always go through is the business impact of HR leaders, and the case study of Cloud9 is a very interesting one. I've heard it from you once earlier, but I think the listeners would benefit if you could briefly tell us what happened and how did it make a business impact?
Sure. Thank you everyone for having me here. I think it's a very innovative name to have innovation and renovation in the same name. And Nitin sir, as I call him, was like a super senior of mine in one of my earliest assignments. And he, as I remember, was a gentle giant. He was a very senior person then. But then I never saw team members scared of him, right? So you'd see people milling around his desk, right? There used to be like a waiting line, right? There was no social distancing then, but if there was social distancing, the line would have gone to 100 meters. So thank you for having me here and very kind words. Hi guys who get to work with him now. And I'm based out of Bangalore, India. And yeah, let's get into business. And yeah, so the first question that has been thrown at me is, what about Cloud9? So this is slightly dated, but interesting. So Cloud9 was a small company, around 90 people when I joined. It was a one unit company. I saw potential in the company. I wanted to be there. People at home said, not at home, I mean, more or less friends said, what will you do in a maternity hospital? You're neither a doctor nor a nurse. I said, no, I think there's potential. Good investors had put in money, and that to me spoke. And I was really passionate about the business when I saw kids there, moms there, and so on. Incidentally, around 6 months before that, we had our first baby there 10 years ago. And I knew there was potential there. So quite a few things. So one of the first things is that those days there was hardly anything called business HRD among hospitals, right? So what hospitals would do is they weren't too bothered about employee experience. Minimum wages were like what, 4,000 for nurses, right? And then there used to be regular strikes once in 2-3 years, and then it would go up by 500 rupees, right? So not a great situation for anybody. So the first thing that happened to me was when I went to Cloud9, I started trying to understand the business, and I figured out nurses, a BSc nurse studies for 4.5 years. I said, this is more than an engineer. Engineers, if we study for 3.5 years, and half a year goes off for whatever, right? Anxiety about getting a job, but then we kind of cover it saying it's a project, etc.
Mentioning is if we study, so that is also very important.
Yeah, that was a subtle hint to the viewers. So I said, and then I was generally checking out, I saw the attrition levels, they were well into 60% and so on. So reached out to a few friends of mine in the industry and I said, I think I have a problem here. I have 60% attrition last 1 year. They said, how did you achieve it? I thought they were sarcastic. And I said, "Kyun, tera kitna hai?" They said 89%. I said, "Arey Baba, this is a benchmark." So I said, this is not done, right? Because when you keep filling talent into a pot that has a hole, it's going to hit your business. And especially in an experience kind of economy, the value zone where frontline employees meet customers, that's where value gets generated. And if you don't have people there who have resident knowledge, who understand what the customer is looking for, you have a huge problem. So one of the first things was to kind of look at this. And we didn't go for shortcut solutions, right? Went through very, very good understanding of human needs and so on. These days, we use a term called design thinking. Of course, I had heard this in 2009, but then I'm not sure we use design thinking per se in all its cycles and steps and so on, but we did it very intuitively. So what does a nurse need? A nurse gets to work in a 5-star, 7-star kind of a place during the day, but goes back to her hostel, which, well, may not be the best of the places. So what we said is, okay, a maternity hospital can't pay as much as a cardiac hospital, right? Because a cardiosurgeon, 2 feet by 2 feet, for every 1 hour or so, or even half an hour, earns the hospital around 5 lakh revenue, and the stay of the patient is 2 days probably, right? And whereas in Cloud9, the entire hospital is taken for whatever 3-4 different kinds of services, and then the mother stays from 3 to 5 days, and still your revenue is 75,000 bucks. Now think about the difference. So we had to be creative, right? So so it became very clear to me that employee value proposition, if I have to look at it in dollar or rupee terms, is the difference between market salaries and the salaries that I am paying to retain people, right? So if I have to pay 10,000 rupees to a nurse and then retain her, then I don't have to do anything. Stop HR, send people home, right? But if I can't do that and I still want to impact customer outcomes positively, that is where HR's value add comes in. So simple things. We got, I had a great CEO who joined. So we would actually do things that would build empathy in the system, right? I remember one afternoon, we had a center head who wasn't too empathetic. He had come from the typical healthcare mindset. My CEO said, Acha, Aja said. I said, okay, come, let's go. CEO calls you for a walk after lunch. Who says no? So he said, call him also. I said, Acha, Aja. So then we got into a car and we went to the nursing hostel. And then he got down, we went for a round and we made notes, right? Acha, curtains change karna hai, is wall ko light pink kar de hain. You know, you need a larger refrigerator here, you need a bain mari here, and so on. After all this, we came out and the CEO had sent the car off. It was a 1.5 kilometer walk. And he said, chalo chalte hain. And then we started walking. Now the business head was there, started huffing and puffing. He said, can I call the ambulance? Can I call the other car and all that? He said, no, come. So we had to drive the point home that during shift change, you're making nurses walk in the same hot sun for 1.5 kilometers to the hospital. Okay. And you're okay with it. So after this one-way trek by this business head, he found the money and the resources to send an ambulance that was otherwise gathering rust to go and pick up nurses and drop them back. Right? So sometimes, you know, empathy can't happen only with HR. You got to have a leader who also understands that, right? I'm seeing so many startups these days who have come up. They're just not bothered about employees, right? I mean, I have a huge network of HR heads among startups and no. And I think that's probably the difference is, you know, startups that are really in it for the business versus startups that are in for the valuation. That's a stark difference, right? Startups that want to be there, create a great business, they value people. Startups who are there just to make the money, cash the check, and the founders want to get out. Those guys just don't care about people, right? I mean, this is a very, very generic, generalized trend I'm seeing, right? Anyway, coming back to the story, what else, right? So how else can you keep nurses without paying them money? So this was problem number one. We had many others. Reward and recognition. I'll tell you a little more about reward and recognition when we come to SeaGo. But then, yeah, there was a lot of reward and recognition. The third is I looked at the designations. I had a background in companies that which had 27 levels, right? Every year, one promotion also, 27 years it will take for a guy to become EVP, right? And I saw the designations of nurses. They said nurse, senior nurse, superintendent, and nursing head. I said, this sounds like jailer, senior jailer, superintendent. Right? So there's something not right. So we drew up designations like senior nursing executive, nursing lead, technical leader, and stuff like that. And we also said there would be, intra-grade changes automatically. And then intergrade changes that would happen and so on. So this was a big hit. So people would actually take, and we gave them visiting cards. We said, if you want visiting cards, knock yourself out. It's only 50 paise per visiting card those days. So then we started having huge issues after 6 months of this, right? So nurses would go to a competitor and say, I want to get a job here. And they'll say, what are you? She would say, I'm a senior lead nursing executive. They'll say, what is that? Right? These guys would say, I don't know. I mean, I know I do all this work and they call me senior nursing executive or senior lead, right? And then they would come back and say, I mean, this is my problem. We said, that's a good problem to have. Why did you go for the other job? And then, of course, we would retain them. So we started doing a lot of stuff that was intangible and which bound people together. And one of the important things is we did a lot of values-based work, identified values, rolled it out through business heads. did a lot of work around wall to hall and so on. And I was delighted. I mean, this is 6 years after I've left Cloud9. There was some kind of a photograph, ad that popped up on Facebook the other day of Cloud9, and I clicked it and it said customer centricity. I said, "Arey, ye to value." I remember when we were all together and we created this value called customer centricity. So I think, the directors were very open to it. The founders were open to it. Because I've also been in opportunities where a lot more could have been done, but the will wasn't there.
I think you allude this and you mentioned this in the book a little differently about you reaching out to leaders and saying, please use HR. Sometimes HR can make a big difference, and also talk about, because HR in many companies is still relegated as one function in a silo kind of a thing, and people don't reach out. You gave an example of an executive, how he reached, who benefited from this. So we will actually come to that point, and I was just about to, and sorry if I'm barging your flow of thoughts, but how was this, all the entire thing you did for Cloud9, how did it get showcased and finally won that award with NHRD? So what did they showcase as a HR intervention, business intervention? My question is very, you understand, you're smiling. So how was it positioned, which is very important for my team members and others to understand? It doesn't really matter, but I just want to hear from you still.
Sure, Nitin sir. So we didn't do it with an idea of getting an award. Okay. So we ran this for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, there was this NHRD showcase competition. I had a very young, brilliant team. They're all in touch with me. Many of them were freshers, right? And I said, hey, this is a fun opportunity. Why don't we go and tell whatever we've done, okay, and see what happens, right? We've done the right thing. We'll now go and see what happens. Curious. Let's have fun for 1.5 to 2 days and come back. Acha sir, karte hain. So what we did is we basically had a very clear structure around what we did. We spoke about it in a language that high funda strategic HR guys would understand. But because we had basically done what business needs, right? And we felt it was the right thing to do. Now we had to put it in a way that others understood what we did. So we did that, and we did some interesting things. We brought 2 nurses and made them also present HR practices. We said, if it's actually impacted people, let them come and talk about it. Why should we talk about it? I do remember we were there in the stall till 2 a.m. in the night because nobody knew how to kind of put the vinyl on the wall and stuff like that. We borrowed some wood and whatever. So I think that really helped us because NHRD being such a wonderful place, they not only recognized us in Bangalore, also sent us to the national conference in Bombay. And there also we came second. And the first was some huge group. I don't remember. It was Mahindra's or Aditya Birla or one of these guys who have, very, very deep pockets, right? So we were there, a bunch of 5 people, because I could convince my folks only for 5 tickets. And you had a huge contingent of the guys who came first. So in our minds, we had won it, right? And coming second was also, out of 2 awards given, we came second. So for us, it was a big win, yeah.
And when you speak about this, and I can see all these points getting reflected directly and indirectly in the book. You mentioned about design thinking. At that time, the name we had heard, but we probably wouldn't be using it. But we used to do the similar thing. You referred to the book also about a lot of framework on leadership have come with this, same thing but different names, and we shiny objects and sometimes jargonized way of referring to a similar framework which have existed for 50 odd years, probably being given a new name. So how do you, what at the end of the day, both matter, right? Sometimes if you have to internally sell something within an organization as HR professional or to the clients, you have to probably use, names which sound very flashy. And although your book, you said that you want to discuss about something just simple, give it any name if you want, but those are real facts. These are things which are important. Some people may call it something, but the fact is this. So how do you feel about this aspect of shiny objects syndrome that has, taking over the HR community by large versus continuing to do what is right, like you just mentioned about Cloud9, that you had this belief that we have done the right thing, let's showcase it. So is there a balance that is required, or is it okay to flow with the world, what the world is doing? The youngsters here may have this question, so I thought I'll ask on their behalf.
Sure. First thing is, we are shifting gears into the book. The book's called Being an Awesome People Leader, because I've seen over the years that companies that invest in and keep awesome people leaders tend to do extremely good in the business side. And when I say people leaders, I don't refer to HR leaders. I refer to business leaders, line managers, and so on, who really awesome as people leaders. I think it's really a question of times, right? I would think there is no one answer. Times have shifted quite a bit. Youngsters today are going through the kind of uncertainty, ambiguity, and pace that many of us have never seen in our career, right? And I mean, who ever thought about a pandemic? And there are MBA kids who never gone to college. They've paid fees and they've learned only on Zoom, right? So if one were to look at this, one needs to understand the fundamental shifts that are happening. And one of the shifts that are happening is, I wouldn't call it shiny or anything and kind of reduce its importance or be sarcastic about it. What I would say is, it's important to flow with the times and understand what is working, right? I have two my team who have who have a great career in the organization. In addition, they run very, very popular Instagram channels, right? I worked in an edtech company for a short time where I was helping them out, where edtech is booming through YouTube. I've had to hire teachers who, talk about 7-figure salary, right? So I think it's important to understand that there are a few trends that are happening. The first thing is, people are looking at instant attention drawing and things that give them a quick kick, right? I'm in no way being judgmental here. I'm just saying this is a phenomenon. Make peace with it. Okay, phenomena or trends that happen are such that they don't wait for people, right? They just happen. So either you're with it or you get out, right? So it's important to understand this. So if it is, we looked at YouTube, and today YouTube's all gone. It's all about YouTube Shorts, right? It's got to be less than 1 minute. You try and convey whatever you can, otherwise you're out, right? So what's becoming more and more important is, much like marketing folks were trying to decode the unconscious of the larger society, HR also has to understand how to communicate, understanding the larger unconscious sensing of the larger society. By this, there's no way that one can actually do this without actually being a part of it and flowing with the larger group, right? If I don't know what MBA kids value today, I won't know what they will value 2 years down the line, because I've missed the boat, right? I've not shared, slices of time with them and so on. Is it important to do what's the right thing and whatever? Well, I can only tell you that just doing the right thing at the right time makes you immensely happy and proud of it. But people won't get to know about it unless you tell them, right? And is it wrong to tell people what you've done? I don't think it's wrong to tell people what you've done. But then to start sharing it with people and then getting depressed that they've not given you likes or shares or subscriptions, now that's doing yourself a lot of harm, right? So I think it's about doing the right thing, but then leaving it there, not bothering too much about it after that.
I think this is one of the bigger challenges for youngsters, to get instant gratification, and they feel depressed about not getting likes, as you said. And this is a true fact today, I think, that you said. But good, thank you very much, Sid. I lost you in between, but I'm sure the team would have got some inputs, and I will.
I just summed it up after you came back. Actually,
I could realize that that you were smart enough to do it, and thank you for that. So in your book, Sid, and I was particularly, it was a very good, interesting read. First of all, let me tell you, because it was one. It is not as you mentioned right beginning of the book, that it's not a very lengthy book. The number of pages have been kept to decent numbers, 134 or what, something like that, right? So I think that was one. But an interesting start to the book when I read this, and also about the same thing which I discussed about frameworks being there, but this is something which is very simple. So because there are very, very good points there, but I wanted to especially talk about from my end when I read, and I thought I must admit, when I was reading the book, I also read it with the purpose that I'm going to talk to you about it.
Okay.
So the note taking was also there, not only in the mind, but some places I took note that I should check with you what it meant and what it doesn't mean. So you somewhere also talk about growing new branches, and I think you speak about that as a concept, and why people don't do that very often with the concept. Plus the other part, which is which keeps on getting forced into our throat and mind about unlearning things, and and I'm a big believer, have been, that you don't have to unlearn, you just need to learn a new thing. So it doesn't mean that you need to unlearn. And that's particularly why, because it was matching with my view of the world, I like this growing new branches concept, a much better way to put it. So how do you see it? I mean, to grow new branches, we don't have to cut old branches, right?
Sure. That's a very interesting thing. Now, I mean, look at this habit that companies have called performance appraisal, right? They spend significant thousands or millions of dollars on a process that ends up bruising quite a few egos to decide whether to give a person a 7% increment or a 14% increment. Okay, if one were to throw all this time and resources out, probably they could give everyone a 12% increment. Right? Now, let's go deeper and look at it in terms of the harm that's done because of the way feedback's given and understood, right? Feedback is typically, at least in the companies, and my friends talk to me a lot about what's happening in the industry as well. When someone's told to change something, and that's typically a habit of theirs, or they've been practicing this for quite a number of years, they don't know. I mean, it's just grown on them and so on. When something is told to them and say, hey, we'd rather that you don't do this, what they actually hear is you're not okay. Okay, and that's a very harsh thing for someone to understand. While it's not being meant, right? The manager who's telling this doesn't say you're not okay, but that is what the other person hears and understands. Yes. Now, this leads to frustration, resignations. Immediately, there are triggers. HR folks are running after Naukri to figure out how many people from their own company are active on Naukri and all that, right? Now,
we used to run this database, by the way, to check who's doing what. So
yes. And actually reach out to other companies and tell, because there are Naukri has an option saying hide from my own company recruiters.
Right.
So stuff like that. So I mean, look at all this, and the fundamental problem is I don't know how to convey a message across to the other person for that other person's own good, to make him successful, make her successful. So what I'm saying is, by grow a new branch, right? If a tree has to grow a new branch, it doesn't kind of, cut off a branch that it has already, right? It just creates new branch. The similar way, if new behavior has to be grown, it's basically about the future. Don't keep talking to people about the past. I mean, Marshall has written a wonderful article on feed forward. The crux of that is start talking about the future. Talk about something that you can do. If I were to tell you, hey, okay, let me talk to some of your team members, right? So Devika, right? I see 2-3 names, Devika, Nupur, and others. Hey, Devika, if you could do, ABC over the next 1 month, what support do you need for this, right? Versus saying, Devika, you know why I have to justify last 1 year, here's a list of all your sins, and hence you have to start doing ABC, right? There's no motivation left if I talk about the past. Whereas if I talk about the future and give options for a person's mental energy to flow, it's that much more likely that the person is going to pick that up and also feel grateful for having having given them that tip.
Yep, good. And that's where the portion that I think said is that the message about unlearning goes in a wrong way sometimes. I feel that that can be kept, and maybe there's a new branch. It could be I love that.
Yeah, just to quickly tell, when I say you need to unlearn something, what other person hears is, you know what, you went and picked this up from someone. That guy who did this and taught you this is also wrong. You are wrong in learning this. You are wrong in practicing this.
And you're wasted your time.
And you don't have wisdom. That's why you're doing all this, right? So, I mean, such a terrible judgment that is falling on someone's head.
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with you. And you also mentioned one of the very good, interesting thing about, and then, we'll see the time, we'll keep a check, but I just wanted to take 2 more things. Definitely, if we have time, we'll continue a little more.
Sure.
One is on the premise of, your premise, and I believe that is a premise I also want to believe in, is everyone is a good human being. And how, if you go from that premise, how things can fall in place for many other things. Can you be a little more, descriptive around that part? Where did it come from, and why you think it is important for leaders and others to feel that way?
Sure. So this actually came from one of the Buddhist monks. I follow his videos on YouTube. And what he spoke was, he was once called to a prison to kind of talk to the inmates. And then he said he never actually saw a murderer or a thief or a robber or a dacoit. He saw a human being who's committed a murder. He saw a human being who had committed some theft, and so on, right? Now, this is very powerful. It means that everyone's inherently good. They do a few stupid things. And that instantly brings up in the mind the clarity of being able to tease out the behavior from the individual, right? I'm not saying
even the intentions behind it, right? So that's also
whatever, right? At the end of the day, he's done something stupid, and only human beings can do something stupid, right? That's we have a copyright on that. Have you ever seen anything in nature doing something stupid? Never. I mean, we hold the universal copyright for doing stupid stuff, right? So that's a feature. We need to call it a feature of human beings. So having said that, it also gives tremendous potential to actually work with people. I mean, I'm not saying, condone everything and, look the other way or anything. I'm definitely saying, use judgment. And if someone's purposely doing something, then you've got to kind of talk to that person. But then it definitely helps to kind of see the human being who's in front of you and see the potential. And take it in a slightly light-hearted way, because only human beings can do stupid stuff.
Yeah, and just continuing with that thought about taking it light-hearted, I was also very amusing to when you also mentioned about the maybe the baggage we carry about being in school, about don't copy in exam. Mm-hmm. And which was also a very interesting way of putting across the fact that it's okay to follow others sometimes, right?
Yeah. So a lot of what is there in the book also comes from my experience from real executive coaching with leaders, with senior leaders. And one of these things is a pattern I've seen that is a very disabling pattern for leaders, not only in India, but quite a few places around the world. And that is, don't copy in exam. So what happens is leaders love to, they've worked hard in their careers, they've been self-made and so on. But then they have this thing about, I want to do everything myself. Right? I've got to do this myself, and I shouldn't do it with anybody else. And they may not be actually doing this in a willing, aware way. Right? It's one of those, they've probably they've probably switched on a YouTube song. It's like switching on a YouTube song on one of the multiple Chrome windows, and then you've forgotten about it. So constantly that thing is playing. Right? So you got to bring the awareness to that and say, hey, why are you doing this? I mean, where is it written that you shouldn't be working with others to get this outcome? Extremely important in companies for people, especially senior leaders and those who want to grow, to know how to leverage others. Right? A business leader should know how to sit with his finance guy and get the best out of his finance guy. He should be able to sit with this marketing person and ask her, hey, this is the way I've been thinking about the brand, but I'm the business guy, you're the marketing person, you got to tell me how to do this. Right? And if he starts thinking that he knows everything and he shouldn't be copying because, he has very high integrity in his mind, well, it's not really very good for the company, is it?
Shifting to more of given the COVID times and things that have changed, and you mentioned about Tender Love Care, TLC, in quite a nice fashion. How is this inborn to be empathetic? Do you think it is a skill that can be developed? By the way, leaders have been trying really hard to be very, very caring in this trying times. Even if they want to say, "Oh shit, I wanted you to get this done," but then they end up saying, "It's okay. Take rest, take care." And I've spoken to some people who do have this, and they're trying, by the way. But as a habit, many leaders don't have this. I mean, so where this tender love care that you mentioned, what basis that you started with that, and where leaders, how can they, kind of be more oriented towards that?
Yeah, I actually touched upon something called try to care, not cure, in the book. And I look at a phrase called try to care and stop trying to cure.
Right? I was, yes.
Right. And that kind of, flows into what you said. And the fundamental difference is that all leaders have empathy. What they are struggling with is to work in the context that they have, both personal, financial, and organizational, and still be empathetic. That is the challenge they have. Right? So it is not a question of their not being able to be empathetic. Of course not. Put them in a group of their college friends, send them on a picnic. They're all empathetic. Right? Make them, give them a paid holiday, make them play with dogs and cats. All of them are empathetic. Right? It's just that the context that we have created doesn't allow them to be empathetic because either this guy's head is on the line or, something larger. So it's actually a question of alignment of the system. The context doesn't allow the person to be empathetic. So how do I, there are unfortunate events that, kick people into understanding that life is all about empathy. Or there are events like, the pandemic where companies have learned to cure less and care more. Curing is typically going around trying to fix everyone all the time because I said so. Right? Caring is genuinely seeing what is the other person and how do I make the other person successful. It's that simple.
Appropriate. So I, in interest of time, and there are very interesting pointers that I had thought of asking you, but we will still, probably pass it and let people read the book.
That's a good idea. Let them buy the book.
Yeah,
great
but
idea. Yes.
So at the beginning, I also mentioned a little bit about your work with other HR folks and students. So what you want to briefly tell us about Caliber?
Yeah.
And which was earlier the Gear Up, sorry, not earlier exactly, but you also had something called Gear Up in your the channel, and then now SIGA. So what are these things, and how can my team members and all other people who are listening to this probably and will listen to it at later stage can benefit from?
Sure. So a great friend of mine, Shashi, and me, we were kind of thinking, hey, what is it that's the next thing that's going to actually be meaningful to HR professionals? There are WhatsApp groups these days, Telegram groups these days that are 14,000 people, 35,000 people, and so on. And nothing much actually happens on those groups, right? We have large national networks, or rather guilds and, fellowships of some kind of HR professionals. And many of them are focusing on, corporatization and so on. So it gets a little boring, right? You're kind of getting into a HR fraternity to get away from corporate for some time. And then that's also becoming a corporate. So you're like, what's happening? And at the same time, we wanted to make a positive difference. And that's how we founded Gear Up. So that was kind of a trial run for almost a year. We ran it. We had some great responses. We had a YouTube channel. We ran some free for all psychometric, learning sessions and so on. And then we felt, okay, there is potential in what this is. And we rechristened it. We rebranded it as Caliber World. Because Caliber is what seems to make all the difference between someone who's successful and who's not. Right. So Caliber World is there. We have just started work on it, and we already have quite a few members on it, some 250, 300 members. It's absolutely not-for-profit initiative. Marshall and I, I've been extremely lucky to be mentored by him over the last 12, 14 years. And as a part of his knowledge philanthropy project, I told Marshall, I think there's so much of work that you've done, but all of it is relevant to HR folks, especially HR business partners. And very few of them are actually using this. And I've tried this out in multiple companies, adapting some of your practices. And I've seen wonderful results, right? And he said, yeah, go ahead, use it, right? And that's Marshall for you.
Yeah.
So I went back, worked on, something called, now it's called SIGO, which stands for Siddharth and Marshall Goldsmith, right? Siddharth Goldsmith. But then I went back to him and said, Marshall, I need to call it something. Do you want me to call it Marshall Siddharth or Goldsmith Siddharth? I mean, what do it? He sends me a one-liner mail. He says, it's your show, put your name first, right? And I said, yeah, here is one more learning, right? So when you give it in a way that it's no longer yours, right? How many of us actually do that, right? So with a lot of, I didn't feel good about putting my name first, but then he said, you got to do it. And when he says it, you better do it. So that's how SIGO came into place. We have 3 large modules there. One for HR business partners, one for HR leaders, and the other is for HR leaders over a 18-month period. So all this is pro bono again, done on my free time. CIA asked me to run a session for them. We ran it for 40 HR leaders some time ago, 2-3 weeks ago. Some brilliant attraction. People said, oh, life has changed. Life is looking good. I said, yeah, it will if you practice it. So the thing about SIGO, the modules in SIGO they are not very difficult. They're easy. But easy doesn't, they're simple, but they're not easy, right? Simple is intellectually, you'll pick it up. But unless you do it, you're not going to see the difference, right? So these are the 2 other initiatives I run.
So how do we get associated with Caliber? I know I'm associated with your Caliber because I'm in New York.
Go to caliberworld.org. There's a Google form there. Fill it up. You're on.
Sure. Okay. Sid, it was a pleasure. It was an honor. I think I'm sure everybody will enjoy this. And there's so many other things that we could chat, but it's already we have gone a little over time. But I'd like to thank you very much for accepting our request and for spending so much time with us. I think it will be very useful. It was very useful for me. let's hope to catch up again, maybe some other session, some other time. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitin sir, for having me. Thanks to all your team members for coming in. And it was indeed a pleasure. My book is now also available as a hard copy. So
it is? Oh, you should have.
Yeah, it's www.awesomepeopleleader.com, and then there are links there where you can order. There's a website. I think they take around 15 days to actually freshly print a copy and send it. So it's self-publishing. So you get there. And those of you who are interested to read the book, read it and drop me a mail. I will respond eventually.
And your mail remains the same, nagadirect at gmail.com.
gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Sid.